Take a hard, unflinching look at the landscape of professional football right now, because the comfortable illusion of pure meritocracy has not just slipped. It has been violently, completely ripped away. For weeks, the football world was told to sit back, be patient, and trust the evaluation process in Berea. We were fed the standard corporate lines. Competitions are settled between the white lines. The absolute best player will play, and on-field execution is the ultimate currency inside a professional locker room. But what we are actually witnessing unfold between Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson is not a standard quarterback competition. It is a catastrophic collision between undeniable on-field reality and desperate organizational self-preservation. You are locked into NFL zone talks, the absolute, undisputed authority on the raw, unvarnished truth behind the biggest cover-ups, positional battles, and locker room agendas shaping the league. Make sure you absolutely smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and let's dive directly into the incredibly shady reality of the Cleveland Browns quarterback depth chart. To truly comprehend the sheer, mind-numbing absurdity of this institutional cover-up, you first have to look at the immediate, highly calculated reaction from the man who understands football politics better than anyone else walking the planet. Anyone who genuinely believed that Deion Sanders was going to sit back in complete silence while his son systematically outplayed an established veteran, only to have the outcome predetermined by corporate accounting, fundamentally does not understand the man or the standard his family represents. The sports media apparatus is currently working around the clock, sweating through their suits to reshape a narrative that is violently collapsing under its own weight. The unedited film proves that Shedeur Sanders did not merely compete. He decisively, surgically outplayed Deshaun Watson in every single measurable metric of quarterback play. In rhythm, in pocket presence, in processing speed, and in raw execution, the rookie won the position outright. It was not a margin of error call. It was a complete landslide. Yet, when the dust finally settled, the establishment retreated into the safety of their balance sheets. Coach Prime saw it, the players saw it, and anyone with an ounce of football integrity saw it. But that wasn't the whole story, because Deion Sanders refused to let the executives dictate the narrative in the shadows. Throughout his Hall of Fame playing career and his revolutionary coaching tenure, Coach Prime has never allowed anyone to disrespect his family, undermine his players, or insult his intelligence to his face. He does not operate within the submissive, comfortable boundaries of the traditional athletic establishment, and he certainly does not nod along to decisions that defy common sense just to protect an owner's fragile sensibilities. When a strong, fiercely independent man stands up and refuses to bow down to an illogical institutional hierarchy, the system instinctively reacts with absolute hostility. They demand compliance, and they demand silence. Coach Prime understood exactly what the Cleveland media was preparing to do. He knew the loaded questions and the calculated traps were waiting for him. So, at the opening press conference for Colorado's Media Day, he seized total control of the room. He addressed the reality of his son's situation before anyone in the press corps could manipulate it, neutralizing their agenda before it could even leave the launch pad. He made it crystal clear that he sees exactly what the front office is doing, and he ensured the entire world sees it too. And what happened next behind the closed doors of the Browns facility would shock everyone who bought into the media's portrayal of the young quarterback. While the sports talk radio stations were actively losing their minds, Shedeur Sanders handled the ultimate betrayal with a level of chilling, professional composure that demands absolute respect. He did not run to social media to vent his frustrations. He did not cause a public scene, leak petty rumors to reporters, or engage in childish warfare through the press. But make absolutely no mistake, inside that building, the truth was communicated with lethal clarity. When offensive coordinator Todd Monken sat down to inform Shedeur that the starting job was being handed to Watson, the rookie did not shrink. He completely refused to accept the fabricated premise that he had been outperformed on the grass. The internal reports confirmed that Shedeur went out there, executed the complex offense, won the competition outright, and proved his elite capability. To have the door violently slammed in your face, not because of your mechanics, but because of executive mandates, is an incredibly bitter pill to swallow. Yet, he carried himself with the absolute poise of a 10-year franchise veteran, letting his flawless practice tape stand as his primary testimony, while the coaching staff was left to pathetically justify a decision dictated entirely by front office panic. This complete abandonment of football logic brings us to the absolute darkest, most politically corrupt element of this entire saga, completely exposed by a seasoned NFL legend. Former All-Pro running back LeSean "Shady" McCoy recently went on national television and dropped a nuclear truth bomb that shattered the Browns' carefully constructed facade. McCoy explicitly acknowledged that his highly placed sources inside the building were confirming exactly what everyone watching the practice film already knew. The majority of the coaching staff absolutely recognized that Shedeur Sanders was performing at a level that definitively justified him being named the Week 1 starter. But McCoy aggressively pulled back the curtain on the cynical, cutthroat reality of NFL front offices. He revealed that despite everything Shedeur demonstrated, the decision was ripped directly out of the coach's hands by the ownership group. It came down to one singular, inescapable, suffocating factor: $40+ million of fully guaranteed money. Let that terrifying financial reality completely sink into your brain for a second. When an organization commits historic, unprecedented financial resources to a single player, they immediately stop operating on a standard of competitive excellence. They become completely trapped in the sunken cost fallacy. The front office absolutely cannot afford the catastrophic organizational embarrassment of benching a $250 million quarterback for a dynamic young rookie, because doing so is a formal, public admission of a historic executive blunder. They have already lost the cash, but they absolutely refuse to lose the public relations war. So, instead of putting the best quarterback on the field to win crucial football games, they put the contract on the field to protect their own executive resumes and job security. They are actively prioritizing the billionaire's balance sheet over the scoreboard, and they are willing to sacrifice the entire season to do it. This brings us to the most egregious, highly toxic aspect of this entire disaster: the absolute fabrication currently being pushed by the local Cleveland media apparatus. The beat writers and radio hosts are actively getting behind their microphones and blatantly misleading the public, desperately presenting a manufactured image of team unity. They are looking into the cameras and telling the fan base that everything is perfectly harmonious, that the locker room is fully aligned, and that Watson has completely earned the trust of his peers. It is a complete, unadulterated lie. The reality brewing behind those closed doors is that the players in that locker room are deeply, intensely frustrated. You have to understand the psychology of an elite athlete. These men do not dedicate their lives, sacrifice their physical health, and endure grueling training camps simply to participate in an executive face-saving exercise. They sign blood contracts to win championships. When professional players see their own coaching staff deliberately ignore on-field excellence in favor of corporate politics, it completely shatters the fundamental, unspoken trust required to build a winning culture. Let us speak incredibly specifically and call this situation exactly what it is. Look directly at a premier offensive weapon like Quinton Judkins. Insider reporting has made it explicitly clear that Judkins is visibly, intensely furious with how this depth chart has been manipulated. He is actively unaligned with Deshaun Watson leading this unit, and he is far from the only one harboring deep resentment. Think about it from the perspective of a running back. When the opposing defense does not respect the starting quarterback's ability to push the ball downfield, they violently stack the box with 8 or 9 defenders, making the running back's job physically impossible and incredibly dangerous. When a prominent, highly competitive player like Judkins displays that level of open discontent, it reflects a much broader, incredibly deep fracture permeating the entire roster. The players see the glaring discrepancy in practice preparation. They see the massive discrepancy in execution, and they deeply resent being forced to accept an inferior on-field product just because of a terrible contract signed years ago. This toxic dynamic is absolutely not new to this franchise. It is part of a dark, recurring pattern of organizational failure that consistently drives elite talent completely out of the building. Ask yourself a very serious question. Why do you think generational talents like Myles Garrett eventually reached their absolute breaking point? Why do elite competitors eventually look at this environment and decide they have had enough? Because great players want to win above all else. They care about legacy, excellence, and hoisting trophies. When an organization repeatedly demonstrates that its primary objective is managing financial optics rather than putting the absolute best 11 players on the gridiron, the culture rots entirely from the inside out. Great players inevitably leave because they realize their physical prime is being actively sacrificed at the altar of corporate mismanagement. The local beat writers can continue to run desperate interference for the front office, clinging to their press passes and team access. They can continue to dismiss the boiling frustration of the players, but the locker room knows the absolute truth. You cannot continually gaslight 52 grown men when the visual evidence is broadcast on the practice tape every single afternoon. The intense hostility directed toward the Sanders family in the midst of this cover-up is not an isolated incident. It is a highly systemic pattern, and Shedeur Sanders highlighted this exact, chilling reality just days ago. Shedeur stepped forward to actively address the growing, highly toxic culture of individuals who openly root for their family's downfall. He called out the critics who manufacture endless controversy and create thousands of hours of content simply hoping to watch this family stumble and fail. As Shedeur pointed out with devastating clarity, there is a vast, unmistakable difference between holding an athlete accountable for their execution on the field and actively, maliciously preying on another human being's failure. Accountability is a fundamental pillar of professional sports. Malicious ill will, however, is the desperate symptom of a completely broken media culture. The relentless, exhausting obsession with trying to humble the Sanders family has completely exposed the dark motives of numerous critics who care far less about the actual game of football than they do about seeing their own deep-seated biases validated. Fortunately, we live in a brand new digital era where the traditional institutional gatekeepers no longer hold a complete monopoly on the narrative. The receipts are absolutely everywhere. Independent analysts, film gurus, and dedicated observers are putting in the grueling hours to pull up the undeniable evidence. They are going back through months of footage, isolating every single snap, every complex read, and every tight window throw, juxtaposing Shedeur's elite tape directly against the erratic, highly concerning daily reality of the veteran. The game film simply does not possess an agenda. It does not care about guaranteed contracts or front office feelings. When you cut through the biased commentary and simply observe the raw mechanics, the instant decision-making, and the absolute command of the offense, the truth becomes entirely undeniable. The public is no longer dependent on the sanitized, team-friendly talking points handed down by frightened beat writers. The receipts exist in broad daylight, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Shedeur Sanders earned that starting position through pure, unadulterated execution. We are officially standing at an absolute, undeniable precipice regarding the immediate future of this incredibly talented football team. What we are witnessing with Shedeur Sanders right now is a perfect microcosm of the massive structural barriers that exist when an undeniable outsider threatens the established, comfortable order of the league. Shedeur walked into that hostile environment, put his head down, and completely outworked, outplayed, and outclassed the heavily favored competition. He did exactly what football coaches preach from the moment a kid puts on his first pair of shoulder pads. He let his elite play do all of the talking. And yet, when his flawless play demanded that he be rightfully elevated, the institution panicked. They chose the comfortable, incredibly expensive failure over the bold, undeniable talent. But the narrative of this quarterback room is incredibly far from settled. The National Football League regular season has a brutal, unforgiving way of violently stripping away every single PR campaign, every desperate executive excuse, and every inflated contract. When the stadium lights turn on, the crowd is screaming, and the defensive pressure mounts. Money absolutely cannot throw a 15-yard out route. A $40 million paycheck cannot read a complex safety rotation, and a guaranteed contract cannot rally a deeply fractured, resentful locker room. The game of football always, eventually, demands the absolute truth. And right now, the unavoidable truth is that Shedeur Sanders definitively proved he belongs at the helm of this franchise. The locker room knows he earned it, the opposing defenses know he is the real threat, and the front office is officially living on borrowed time. I want to hear your absolute raw, unfiltered thoughts down in the comments below. Exactly how many quarters of bad football will the coaching staff tolerate before the locker room mutiny forces them to pull the plug? And do you genuinely believe the Browns are intentionally throwing away the season just to protect the owner's pride? Drop your absolute best, most aggressive takes below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep your notifications on. And I will see you all in the very next deep dive.